We're here in Sonoma County, California, talking about reducing powdery mildew fungicides on grapes through good application and timing. With mildew, the critical time for preventing it is from about bud break through pea size. After pea size, mildew control is still important, but the risk lessens as the fruit approaches 13 degrees Brix. After 13 degrees Brix, new infections won't start, and after 16 degrees Brix, old infections die off. And just for reference, the fruit's about 13 degrees Brix when it hits veraison. Growers traditionally start their program when the growth is between 1 and 4 inches. And by traditional, I mean any of the preventative materials that are on this list. These are preventative materials. They need to be applied before the mildew infections occur. These materials are not good for stopping mildew once it's started. The advantage of using these products is that they can redistribute to new tissue. They have a long effective time, and they can work against fungi other than mildew. A somewhat newer approach is to start the fungicide program when mildew colonies appear, and that can be later in the season. The canopies can be pretty long, and you use an eradicant material like oil, not the preventative materials that were in the previous list. There are other eradicant materials other than oil, but most growers use oil because it's also effective against leafhoppers and mites. The downside to using eradicants is that they have a short effective time and they don't protect new tissue when it comes out. But you might use one less spray by starting later in the season. If you want to try this approach, you can look at the powdery mildew index, and when it starts rising, you'll know when to start your sprays. You can look at the Sonoma County Wine Growers Western Weather Report to look at the mildew index. Whether you're using a traditional start time or the later start time, you want to make sure that your sprayer is in good condition. Check the nozzles, check the pressure, and check your spray pattern. That way you'll get good coverage in the canopy. If you don't get good coverage, you're going to get mildew where that spray didn't hit. And one of the most common mistakes I see is when tractors are going too fast. A 1 mile an hour difference between 2.5 and 3.5 miles an hour doesn't seem like a big deal, but that's a 30% difference, and it really does affect it. The other big mistake I see is when people have the pressure too high. It may look great to have blasting through to 2 rows, but if you think about it, that's flattening the leaves against the clusters, and nothing gets behind that. What you want is like a gentle ruffling so that the material goes behind the clusters. This will keep more money in your wallet and less pesticides in the environment. And getting the right spray interval will also reduce the pesticides in the environment. If the interval is too long, you'll get mildew, but the right interval is what you're aiming for. Every product has a label, and on the label will be a recommended rate, range, and a spray interval range. You don't want to use a low rate and a long interval if the mildew pressure is high. You want to match the mildew rate and the product interval so that you don't get mildew. So what do you do come June? You got mildew. You think you've done everything right. I would recommend looking at the cluster exposure. If you've got leaves hanging over the clusters, you have more than one leaf layer protecting the fruit, you've probably got too many leaves. Spray can't get in there. It's cool, it's humid. Mildew loves that, and there's no UV light to kill that mildew. The mildew happens because you got the wrong rates, you got bad coverage, or you waited too long. But even knowing all that, you may still have problems. You just have to plan on eradicating it. So probably start by doing some extra leaf removal, then get your tractor in there, do a really careful, high volume application with an eradicant product. If you still have mildew after a day or two, unfortunately, you didn't get it. One thing you really don't want to use is fancy chemistry on an active mildew infestation. And by fancy chemistry, I mean DMIs, strobies. Those are really good at preventing mildew, but not at getting rid of it. A couple reasons for that. If you get resistance, it's because you're using it too much on an active infestation. You've got billions of spores out there, and you're challenging those spores to try their lucky lottery resistance gene. Somebody's going to make it, so don't do it. Use an eradicant. So mildew doesn't have to be a problem. You can keep money in your pocket and pesticides out of the environment by making sure your tractor's in good condition before you get out there, by using the right intervals, the right products, and making sure your canopy's in the right shape. Do all that and you'll be in good shape for the season.